could dodge around to get at those cowpunchers." The firing had ceased for the moment, and the man who had tried to creep down to the ravine was stumbling back up the hill. Williams nervously thrust his plea again. I tell you, we've got to get to work on this thing behind us, and do it quick," he urged. "There is still water enough in the lake to tear out the heart of the Timignani Canyon if it all goes at once." Sprague set the temerarious example by springing to his feet, and the others followed him. There was no answering volley from the hillside. On the contrary, the black blot of things animate on the slope was melting away, and a minute later Tarble came running back. "The boys have got their hunch," he cried. "A couple of them are taking Jennings back to Angles, and the rest of them will be here in a minute to help us. They didn't know what was up." As one man, the half-dozen flung themselves upon the task of keeping the roaring crevice under control, and a little later 8 of the cowmen came racing down to swell the working force. But even for the augmented numbers, it proved to be a fiercely fought battle, with the issue hanging perilously in the balance for a long time. Hour by hour they toiled, making plank bulkheads out of the shack lumber, piling sandbags against the crumbling embankment, and fighting inch by inch with the gnawing flood as the night wore away. And it was thus that the graying dawn found them, soaked, muddied, gasping, and haggard with fatigue, but with the victory fairly won. The flood was still pouring through the gap, which had by now widened to the cutting away of a full half the dam, but the great body of water had already passed out, and there was no longer any danger. When the sun was just beginning to redden on the higher peaks of the western mountains, a shout from the hillside road broke upon the morning stillness. A moment later, Maxwell and Stillings came running to the brink of hazard. Sprague stumbled up out of the crevice chasm and pointed down to the washed-out heart of the dam. There, piled in the bottom of what had once been the plank-lined pit with the hoisting tackle over it, and laid bare now by the scouring flood, was a great pile of dynamite stacked solidly in its shipping boxes. And, half buried in the sand and detritus of the outflow, lay the iron pipe through which the firing fuse had been carried to the gully edge Jennings had tried to reach. "There is the warrant for what we've been doing, gentlemen," said the big expert wearily. "Take a good look at it, all of you, so that if the courts have anything to say about this night's work—" Maxwell cut in quickly. "There's nobody left to make the fight. Jennings went east from Angles on the first train that got through. He was badly blinded, so Disbrow says. Got a fall from his horse was the story he told. We'll fix this layout so it will stand, just as it is, until everybody who wants to has seen it." "You couldn't stay away, could you?" said the white-haired colonel, grinning up from his seat on the last of the sandbags. "I told the boys here you'd be turning up as soon as your railroad track was open." "We've had a mighty anxious night," Stillings put in. "The river is up 5 feet, and we couldn't tell what was happening over here. Great Jonah, but you men must have had your hands full." "We did," said Smith. "But it's all over now. All but the shouting," said Maxwell. "But post your guards and let's get back to town. My car's at Angles, and we came up special. When we left, Brewster, the plaza was black with people waiting for news." It was on the way down the flood-swollen canyon that the chemistry expert explained to the private car company at the breakfast table how he had been able to diagnose the case of the cloud-bursters. "It was merely a bit of what you might call constructive reasoning," he said modestly. "I knew by personal investigation in the line of my proper work, soil testing, that there was no arable land within reach of the Mesquite project. The other steps followed, as a matter of course. Starbuck here is wondering why I risked his life and mine to get a few photographs for the Tribune, but if any of you will examine the snapshots carefully under a magnifier, you will see that they prove the existence of the central pit in the dam, and that one of them shows the pipeline through which the fuse was to run. For the possible legal purpose, I was anxious to have this evidence in indisputable form. That's all, I believe." "Not quite all," Maxwell broke in. "How did you know that Jennings would be hanging over the wire at Angles while you people were making your flying trip across the mountain in the auto?" Sprague laughed good-naturedly.
"Call it a guess," he said. "It was evident that Jennings wasn't anxious to kill a lot of innocent people. His inquiries about the strength of the Highline Dam proved that. It ran in my mind that he wouldn't touch off his earthquake until he could be reasonably sure that the flood wouldn't catch a train in transit in the canyon. That would have been a little too horrible, even for him. Now, you've got it all, I guess."
"But you haven't got yours yet," laughed Stillings. "When this thing gets out in Brewster, the whole town will mob you and want to make you the next mayor, or send you to Congress, or something of that sort."
"Not this year," said the big man, with another mellow laugh. "And I'll tell you why. Just before this train reaches town, it's going to stop and let us lawbreakers get off, scatter, and drop into town as best we can without calling attention to ourselves. And tomorrow morning you will read in the Tribune how the Mesquite Dam, weakened by the recent storms and cloudbursts, went out by littles during the night, watched over, and kept from going as a disastrous whole by a brave little bunch of—" he looked around the table and winked solemnly, "by a brave little bunch of cowboys from the Lazy X." Then, with sudden soberness, "Promise me that you won't give it away, gentlemen all. It's the only fee I shall exact for my small part in the affair." And the promise was given, while the locomotive whistle was sounding for the Brewster yard limits, and Maxwell was pulling the air cord for the out-of-town stop. End of The Cloudbursters by Francis Lind, Part 2.